I called this, I want to call, no, they want you to do it online. So I tried to do it on the power online. Then they wanted my account number, so I went and got the account number. So I tried to do that.
You can do it on the phone.
All right, so now we're
I always
live.
do it.
It didn't go through on
So
the phone.
let's do
They said
share.
such a time, we don't have enough people and.
Just sleep?
Yeah, that's where they don't have somebody to talk to you.
Okay, so do a little
Switch you over to
introduction
the
about
automatic,
who you are.
automated phone system.
People know.
Well, it didn't do that. I was, went and
I
dug
think
out
they
the,
changed it
I
recently.
figure when a lot of people are.
yeah, somebody else called.
There we go.
Okay.
And why does that power go out for no apparent reason? This happens. I'm always looking.
Whatever that purple stuff is, whether it's invasive or not, it's
It's a rate. I don't know, but it's a little more, and we're probably gonna.
Probably one of the reasons why it's laying around.
At least there'll be a storm.
I'd buy it at the
Store.
store.
On that cheery note, let's get started before we lose electricity. I'm Wendy Woolerton. I worked at Cornell Cooperative Extension in Millbrook for 5 years with the Master Gardeners. I was on a committee that was an inter-county different agency committee about invasive plants. And they're a problem for everybody. I mean, I divided them into shrubs, vines, weeds, but there's also water plants.
And trees.
And trees. Let's see. How does this pen go?
Should be enter?
No. Okay, there we go. All right, so there's reasons why invasive plants are damaging, and most of the invasive plants, and I'll point it out as we go through the slides, they were introduced by accident to be landscape plants in the late 1800s, early 1900s. People didn't realize they could be a problem. In their own country, most of them come from Asia, there's natural predators to keep them in check. But since we're in North America and not Asia, there's nothing to keep them on check, and they grow out of control. They grow so much, they eliminate the native plants, which reduces food and shelter for wildlife. They also, because they're so invasive and so massive, they reduce the amount of light, water, and space for other plants. And they can change the soil's chemistry for native plants to grow. All right, so this is one of the many mistakes in landscaping. I know, this used to be a standard landscape plant. It's a Bradford pear. And, people put them in their homes, municipalities had them everywhere, they were all being promoted. Well, there's a field next to the Baptist home in Rhinebeck off of 308, two fields, one across the street on both sides of 308. They're filled with Bradford pears in the spring. They just grow like crazy. And what happens if they grow so much, the other native plants can't have a chance to grow. And, there's different types of food for insects, caterpillars, and birds rely on native plants, not necessarily landscape plants. Anybody have multiflora rosebush?
Oh, yeah. Living fence.
All right, this is the only rosebush I had in my house when I lived in Clinton. It's native to China, Korea, and Japan. It was introduced from 1886 from Japan. And this is prolific. It's hard to get rid of this. And about 10, 12 years ago, there's a virus called rosette disease. It gets on the multiflora rose bush, a mite goes there and then goes to your landscape roses. What happens is, if you see the picture on the bottom right, the leaves and the flower shrivel up, turn reddish brown, and the plant really dies. The only thing you can do is to dig it up, throw it out, sterilize your shovel when you dig it out. Now, I did notice that some of the really old roses, like a friend of mine has roses from his grandmother, they didn't get this disease. So there are probably a few roses that are resistant to rosette disease, but the main source of the mite is the multiflora rosebush, getting the virus there and then transmitting it to your landscape roses.
do you dispose of it when you dig it up? Do you have to burn it or?
I would put it in a black plastic bag and then put it in the garbage. Okay, another, popular landscape plant was barberry. And this was introduced in the United States 1875. It was promoted as an ornamental substitute for common barberry, which was prone to black rust disease. But then I guess they never thought that it would take off and spread like crazy. It spreads because the deer can eat the berries drop on the ground, the birds eat the berries and spread it. And there are reputable landscape businesses should not be selling this. They might sell a different variety, but not this one. Burning bush. Everybody go out and buy their own burning bush. If you drive around in another month, you'll be seeing them in the woods everywhere, just like the barberries. Again, this is from Asia, introduced in the mid 1800s. Even though they knew it was invasive, they still were selling them, through the 70s up until now. And there's numerous seeds. I'm constantly weeding them out of my property. I see little seedlings come up all the time and weed them out. If you have one and you like it and you want to keep it in check, great, but be aware that a lot of seeds come from it and could be spread. And right now, as you're driving down the road, you can see giant knotweed or Japanese knotweed is all along the highways. I was just over in Greene County like a week ago, and all along the Catskill Creek is giant knotweed. And
I've just been to Virginia and back.
you see it everywhere?
And the entire route. Because I was riding with Esther and she said, what's knotweed? And I said, right there.
Right there. And I went to, when I was on this committee, they gave a talk about this, and they said, well, along the Catskill Creek, they know it's there, but if the DEC ripped it out, what would they plant for erosion control in its place? And the state cannot afford to do some massive project like that. So it's still there. So if you have it on your property, again, this is from Asia, introduced in the late 1800s as an ornamental. On the top right photo over here, let me move this point. Right here, that's the rhizome. Rhizome is like the root. And what you do is, if you know this is on your property and you see it starting to grow in the spring, keep cutting it. Cut it like 5 times between the spring and this time of the year. What happens is you're starving the carbohydrates that are in the rhizome. And the rhizome should eventually die if you keep cutting it. And then dig the rhizome up and get rid of it. This is like tenacious. And the thing is being able to recognize what this looks like in the spring. If you have plant ID, did anybody have plant ID on their phones, their cell phones? You could also, when it starts to come up, or see where it is now, this time of the year. Recognize where you see it now. When seedlings come up in the spring, you'll know where it is. Start cutting then and keep cutting and cutting and cutting all through the season.
It looked along the highway that it was actually planted as erosion control in some areas.
I don't think so.
Well, in other states.
I think it just gets out of control because I've driven around and it's everywhere.
Yeah.
This is, yeah.
I think it was up there on that top.
All right, good. Whoops, wait a minute. So, back. Okay, here we go. Anybody have any wetlands on their property? Okay, you do. Anybody else? All right, you're familiar with purple loosestrife?
Yep.
Again, this came from Europe, not Asia, in the 1800s. And one plant can have over 1 million seeds. So probably, I think it was like in the 1990s, the state was able to get a beetle introduced. There's a procedure. If you're going to introduce an insect, you have to go through proper paperwork with the state before we can do this. And the beetle, it's a biological control to control the purple loosestrife from growing. They feed on the leaves and new shoots of the plants, effectively controlling it. So all of us are old enough where you, except for you, remember what it used to look like around here. It was everywhere. And there's less now than there used to be. I mean, I do see some, so I'm wondering if the beetles have died off a little bit. But it's better to have a native control, like an insect controlling it, and then trying to spray it, especially since it's near water. And yellow flag iris, anybody have that? Nope. All right, it looks pretty. It looks beautiful. It's a native Eurasia in North Africa. It was brought in the 1700s as an ornamental wetland plant. It's prohibited in New York State as an invasive plant. It has been used as erosion control, but it really takes off and spreads like crazy. If you were to dig it up, blue flag iris is a native plant. And you could probably get that at Catskill Native Nursery in Kerhonkson or on Route 22 near Pauling. There's a native plant nursery down there. Or you could call Adams. Maybe Adams might have blue flag. But if you were able to dig out the yellow iris, then I would replace it with the blue flag. Anybody have bamboo? No? Everybody see bamboo?
That's a real battle.
That is a battle. All right. Native to Southeast China and Japan, brought to Alabama in 1882, used as a noise and privacy screen. It's really huge. There was a woman that lived in Armenia. She was a master gardener. She had a bamboo farm, which when she was alive, she kept it under control. She had all different types of bamboos, and you need to have a barrier in the ground so the roots don't spread like mint does. And unfortunately, she died and the property was sold. So I don't know what happened to the bamboo farm. But this is similar to the giant knotweed. It's constant cutting, cutting, cutting to starve the rhizome. And then again, you would dig up the rhizome and bag it and put it in the garbage.
Andy, are there any varieties of bamboo that are not invasive or?
No.
There's running bamboo and then there's the other bamboo. The running bamboo is the bad one.
Yeah.
That's the one where the roots spread under the ground so fast. I'm trying to think what the other one.
Jogging bamboo?
I don't know. But I would also, if you were ever to have bamboo, is put a metal barrier deep in the ground around the plant so the roots don't spread. Water chestnuts, I was just to the Hudson River a few times in the last month. They're massive. I mean, they're really, I don't know if the state can afford to do anything about it, but they're huge, huge clusters of water chestnuts in the Hudson River. And there's also warnings if anybody has boats, to wash your boat off, after you're in the river.
Lake George, you have to do that.
Yeah, and there's another park near New Paltz, the state runs, and they quiz you about if you've washed your kayak or canoe before you've gone in there because they don't want you spreading this. Water chestnuts are native to Eurasian Africa, and they were brought to the United States in the mid 1800s as a ornamental plant again. What happens is they're so massive, they shade out the native aquatic plant that provides food and shelter for fish, waterfowl, and insects. And then the seed pods, these are torturous if you ever step on them. And this is what it looks like. Plant that goes down into the river. This is what you're seeing on top, those plants. And they produce these seed pods. And I'm not sure. Obviously, it grows in salt water because the Hudson River is part salt water and part fresh water. But these are really out of control. All right, one of the biggest plants when I was on this committee was Mila minute vine. It's part of the buckwheat family. It's native to India and Eastern Asia. And it was introduced by contaminated nursery stock into Pennsylvania in 1930. Single vine can grow up to 6 inches in one day.
Whoa.
Yeah, that grows fast. It's like our version of kudzu up here. And it forms a dense mat over plants, blocking out sunlight, strangling the other plants. So what happened, how it came to Dutchess County is there was a family in LaGrange hired a logging company from Pennsylvania. And when they brought their logging company in, there was mud on the logging equipment. Probably the seed pods were in the mud, dropped to the ground. This grows prolifically. And they were near the stream, Wappingers Creek, I think. And it really spread very quickly in Dutchess County. It's unique because you can see if you were going to pull this, it pulls out very easily. These are like little barbed wires, just like raspberry bushes. And it has a very like almost like a triangle, like morning glories do. And this thing is called a acria, the little circle where the berries are. If you were to pull this out, put it in black plastic bags, leave them out in the sun for about 5 days, and put that in the garbage. Do not put it in your compost pile. And this is what it would look like on a hillside.
Oh, my God.
You know, it's sad. Bard College, it was at Bard College a few years ago, and I went to use the restroom at the Stevenson gym, and I'm looking in the flower bed, and I was like, you know, something looks familiar. So I called Amy Perilla, who's the landscape person at Bard. And I said, do you know you have Mile a Minute vine at the Stevenson gym in the flower bed? And she said, yeah, when we made the new science building, topsoil came from Stormville, and the seeds were in the topsoil from Stormville. So it had spread over to the gym, probably spread other parts of the campus. Amy was from Pennsylvania, so she knew enough to pull it out and put it in black plastic bags. And this is another favorite. We all like this at Christmas time for decorating our wreaths. But if you drive around now, you can see these vines are everywhere. Oriental bittersweet. It can girdle a tree, as you can see the vines around this tree over here, like this. And you know, if you're going to use it for decorating, just make sure you keep track of where the seeds are. This is really difficult to control. I would cut all the branches off and try to dig out the roots. But this spreads like crazy because of all the seeds. You know, you can see this is just one shrub, all the amount of seed pods are on the one plant. Wild grape. Now, this is the exception to the rule. This is a native plant, but it's out of control. It's the most common invasive plant in the Hudson Valley. And the vines are heavy. They can break a tree or bend a tree over. You know, I see them right across the street from me. And when I drive around, you know, there's some cedar trees that are completely covered with wild grapes. And, you know, no one's keeping them under control because they're along the roadside or by the transfer station by me. For the wild grapes, I would just keep cutting the vines and cutting the shoots. And if you keep cutting, again, over 3 years, I should kill the vine. But I see wild grapes going up the utility pole wires all the time. I mean, they're everywhere. I think a lot of this is just bringing awareness to the highway crews, and maybe with the budget cuts, they can't keep up with all the invasives that are around. But if I see them on the utility wires, I try to cut them at the base so at least they die. The thing about weeds is this is a perfect example. This is dandelions, which we all know. Someone would say, I weeded my garden, I got rid of all the weeds, they're all gone. And then next year, more weeds come up, but less. The problem is weed seeds can live in the soil up to 10 years. So say someone wanted to use Roundup. I don't promote it, but someone used Roundup. And they said, I use Roundup and I got rid of all my seeds this year. And then the next year, weeds came up again. Well, they will continue to come up again. And you have to keep weeding. If you know, like, if you didn't want this to spread, the dandelions to spread, the thing to do is to cut them before they go to seed. And Creeping Charlie, everybody got this in their lawn? This is kind of annoying too. My house was a foreclosure. When I first moved in, my entire backyard was Creeping Charlie. Because it's partially shaded. And it pulls easily, but on the bottom right-hand photo here, when it's in your lawn, it's in with the grass and it's really hard to pull that out. So you could try pulling it. David Chinnery, who was a Rensselaer County horticulture employee with the Cooperative Extension, put out a pamphlet, and I think I have it. Yeah, it's the third link online. So in 2009, David came up with this idea: if once a week you overseed your lawn, it will strangle out the weeds, like Creeping Charlie. And when you read the pamphlet, you don't have to rototill, you don't have to aerate, you don't have to do anything.
Just overseed it.
Right, once a week for 3 weeks. So I've done that repeatedly in my backyard. I usually do it in the spring. And mid-August through mid-September is the best time to plant a lawn. So this would be a prime time to do it. So I can tell there's less Creeping Charlie than there was when I first moved in 14 years ago, and more grass coming up. But I like the part where you don't have to do any labor. You just scatter the grass seed repeatedly and just strangle it, just let a lot of seed go in there, let it germinate, and eventually it will strangle out the Creeping Charlie. All right, this is similar to Mila Minute Vine. It's called hog peanut. And when Mila Minute Vine first became aware of a problem in Dutchess County, I used to get phone calls all the time at the Cooperative Extension, and I'd go out and it would be this plant. Instead of the sharp triangle leaf that Mila Minute has, this is more like a teardrop leaf. It's a summer vine. It grows in the shade. There's 2 different flower seeds, so there's 2 different seed pots, and it's very easy to pull out by hand. This spreads really quickly. It will cover a whole hillside very quickly if you don't keep an eye on it. And this is what the flower looks like on the left. And then the seed pods really kind of look like peas, to tell you the truth. And another one, these are pretty. Same family as Mila Minute and Hog Peanut. It's the same family. Bindweed, which is wild morning glories. It's native to North America. This is easy to pull too. I have it growing all over the place. I see it along the roadside. It's very easy to pull. I mean, of all the weeds, this one is probably the less damaging. Certainly less damaging than Mila
I
Minute
have
Vine.
that one in my garden, at
Yeah.
least that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
And it takes over my entire garden.
Yeah, that's what.
It pulls everything down.
Yeah.
When you go to pull it out, it's white, and it was like the full length of my table, the table here. And I had to follow it all the way across. And I couldn't believe it.
So anyway, so the seeds, because of previous years, have dropped in the ground. So you're going to have to keep weeding that out every
We
year.
got soil from somebody else 2 years ago. I normally get it at Phantom Gardener in Rhinebeck, which has been great. And we got it from somebody else, and I've never had such a bad weed problem in my life.
So anyway, I'm just going to interject this right now. So if I offend anybody who's in the garden club, I'll apologize in advance. But I'm being careful about where I get plants from. There's a friend of mine who lives in Red Hook, and in her garden, she had tons of hostas and coral bells, lots of shade plants. She had this weed called the shade weed of Red Hook. I don't really know what it is. I don't recognize it. It's not everywhere. And she decided about 20 years ago to be nice, to dig up some hostas to give to her mother, who was in her early 80s in the Finger Lakes. So she brought the hostas to her mother, and her mother got older, couldn't keep up with the garden. And along with the hostas came this Red Hook weed. And it overtook her mother's entire garden because the weed seeds were in the soil. So you're probably right. Probably the weeds came in the soil wherever you got it from. Does anybody compost? Anybody do composting? Yeah, I had compost pile and then I go to Agway and I usually get a bag of garden soil or something like that and mix it with my compost in a wheelbarrow before I spread when I'm planting something. When I lived in Clinton, I had clay soil. Where I live now, I have gravel. So it needs both places, the soil needed to be amended before I could plant something. So unfortunately, you're gonna have to keep weeding, get rid of it. Anybody have garlic mustard? I did this talk in Millbrook and somebody said, I love it. And I said, good for you. Oh, I think they've made mustard out of it. She was really into this. It's everywhere. It comes up early in the spring, like May. So once it comes up, start pulling it. Don't let it get to flowering like this part, because once the flower goes to seed, the seeds drop on the ground and it'll be everywhere. It's from Europe and Asia. It's introduced in North America for medicinal purposes and food. And one plant can have 600 seeds. So manual pulling in the spring. I see little babies coming up in my garden. I keep pulling them. Mugwort, this is another problem. It's native to Europe, Asia, North Africa. In the 1600s, it was brought here as a herb. It spreads by rhizomes under the ground. So you would just do hand pulling, or smother it with newspapers or plastic. If you were doing hand pulling, I would just keep pulling it. I've made a mistake before. I made a lot of mistakes, but one of the mistakes, I bought a plant called Artemisia Silver King. It's a landscape plant, and it's of the mugwort family. And the Artemisia Silver King was sort of like this, only silver, and it spread everywhere in my garden, and I wished I had never planted it.
Mugwort is only listed as invasive in New York State.
Probably.
Why?
Maybe because we have better biologists here.
Nations, it's like, it's in blue for introduced and all, law
Yeah.
part of the United States, but only
Yeah.
invasive in New York State.
Yeah, well, I'm with that because it's everywhere I see it. I see it over the transfer stations on my property. It grows very well. I mean, it's happy here. So this is enough.
Right out here in the front.
Yeah, I'm sure
It was huge.
Yeah. Whoops, my mic.
Even get rid of it.
Okay, next one. All right, I have this in my lawn too, and I dig it up, and this has a deep tap root. Chicory starts to bloom maybe around 4th of July. It's along the roadside. It's from the Mediterranean. It was a salad green in Europe. One of the master gardeners told me when they were rationing during World War II, they added the roots of the coffee substitute. And it can be used for seasoning, but it does spread pretty quickly, and it grows in poor soil. If it grows along the highway, it can grow pretty much anywhere. It prefers full sun. And I have to take my hoary knife and really dig it out because it's a deep taproot and really pull it. It's pretty. Japanese stilt grass. I have
Oh my
that.
God, it came up this year.
Yeah, this year, I never had it before, but
All right.
everywhere.
All right, so 20 years ago, we didn't have this. It's invasive annual, resembles bamboo, grows in the shade. I went down Woods Road in Germantown, which is all shaded. It's all on either side of the highway. I think when the highway department bush hogs, mows, it gets spread that way. Seeds probably spread it. I have it in my lawn this year and I never had it before. Because it's an annual weed, it dies back in the fall. It's native to Japan, China, India, and Central Asia. It was brought here accidentally not too long ago.
Yeah, I never had it before and I had it this year.
Yeah, and it spreads very, very quickly. There's a new park, Hopelands in Statsburg. It's a wooded park, nice through. Only a small part is out in the open field. It's mostly in the woods. The whole understory of Woodlands or Hopelands Park looks like this Woodlands here. It's all Japanese stilt grass. And this is Another problem, I don't know, anybody here have swallowwort in their property? The pods are similar to milkweed. These are the pods right here. And if they break open, they're like milkweed. You know how milkweed breaks open and those little airy pods go flying all over the place? It's a twiny plant. It can grow in shade or full sun. It grows very quickly. It can strangle out native plants. It's has poisonous alkaloids in the roots, considered to be poisonous to animals and humans. And similar to milkweed, monarch butterfly larvae do not survive if they're on this after hatching. There's some at the Cooperative Extension in Millbrook that they were monitoring, and someone on Route 44 in Millbrook was pruning this like it was Pachysandra on the side of their bank on the side of the road. At least they pruned it before the pods came out. I don't know why they didn't pull it out, but a friend of mine, he had relatives in Chatham, New York, and they gave his mother some plants. And when they gave plants from Chatham, along came the swallowwort. And we pull it out all the time. I was just there on Monday on Labor Day pulling it out. It goes everywhere. It's very twiny. It's very hard to pull out. It's not like Mile a Minute that's very easy to pull out, or the wild morning glories. This is a little bit harder to pull out.
Is it poisonous to your skin or just to?
I always wear gloves when I'm outside. All right, so tools. One I like, especially for the chicory, is this hori knife. You know, and I used it too when I was doing a patio for someone. You know, the flagstones were here because it's skinny. It can get in between the flagstones. These are a variety of other tools you can get. Or if you want things that have long handles that you're not on the ground, there's different cultivators that you can buy. This one is good for a driveway that's stone, like a pea stone driveway. If you rake this back and forth, it dislodges the weeds by roots. So you can just do that a few times, then use a rake and rake up the weeds. This one looks like it's more for in a garden, vegetable garden. Same thing with this one for breaking up the soil. So any questions? Any slides you want to go back to?
Multiflora roses,
Yeah,
best way to get rid of them.
I would cut everything, you know, wear gloves and long sleeve shirt. And when I was in Clinton, I had leather gloves on, really thick leather gloves. The thorn went through the gloves into the joint of my finger. So I had to go to the ER in Northern Dutchess. So wear heavy gloves, cut all the branches down and then dig it up. Dig up the,
If it's too big, what do you?
well, I would do, is there a farmer near you?
Well, do you want to like backhoe it out or something?
Well, sometimes people have small tractors, really small tractors with a scoop on it, like a teardrop scoop that has teeth. That would be easy. You know, if any of your neighbors have that, or I think bobcats, again, they're smaller piece of equipment, not a backhoe. And they have that serrated kind of scoop on the front. They could get in there and dig it up. You know, those are. Go back. Yeah, they're just, those are,
They were introduced to Pine Plains when they had the big stock farm down here, and they planted those floribunda roses
they did,
as a fence to keep the cattle in.
they did.
And they went all over town.
Yeah, I mean, these are everywhere. You know, when I first bought my house, I had a friend who had a bobcat with a scoopy shovel there with the teeth on it. And I had to take the yews out, and then around the side of the house, there was a multiflora rose bush and something else. I said, you can dig this out too. And there was a hydrant there, like you'd find in the stable or a barn, you know, outdoor hydrant. And I was like, wow, I never would have known it was there. It was completely covered by the multiflora rose bush. And the bad part about them too, not only are they annoying, they're also the host of that virus that the mite spreads to kill your your landscape roses. Does anybody have rose rosette disease? Anybody have roses? Do you have roses? No, I didn't either. Roses are high maintenance.
Yeah, they are.
they're high maintenance, so I like low maintenance plants.
Well, barring the fact that you can't dig it out, one of my neighbors said you cut it and then put Roundup on it, like on the stump. And that's what they're doing in like North Carolina, because they also planted it along the highway as a divider.
Yeah,
And now they're trying to kill them because it's just overspread everything.
well, the thing about Roundup is as long as you, like for poison ivy in the fall, you would cut poison ivy down, take a paintbrush and
Yeah, that's what I would.
put Roundup on the stems of the poison ivy. The thing about Roundup, there's two trains of thought. One of the trains of thought, I never used it because I was always afraid it would leach down to the groundwater. And in the town of Claremont, I went on a tour at Hardy Roots CSA. And this is probably 2013, 2014, a while ago. And they had just started there and they had all the fields and they had a hen house and a greenhouse. And I said, did you have to dig another well? And Ben Shute, who owns Hardy Roots, kind of smiled and he said, we tried. And I said, well, what does that mean? And he said, a half a mile down the road is Saw Paw's fruit packing plant. And they have great water pressure. They have great water. There's no problem. He said, we tried to dig 3 wells here and we had salt contamination. And you can't spread salt water on vegetables that are growing because it will just kill them. And I said, well, how did that happen? And he said, because we're on a different aquifer than Saw Paws, a half a mile away. Across the street from us is the Claremont Highway Department. And they have the salt for spreading on the roads in the wintertime. So that's why I'm always hesitant about Roundup and other things going down to your groundwater.
But if you do the application, that's what my neighbor said, just take it with a paint or something.
Yeah, if you want to be careful.
Right.
Be very careful.
Because ours are just spread so much and we can't even get in there. anymore.
Yeah.
They're so fast growing.
Yeah, or again, if someone with a big bush hog to go through and bush hog, the highway department, they have 2 different bush hogs. They have the one along the ground and they have the other one with the arm that takes the bushes. But I remember, this is scary too. On Route 9G from the Kingston Rhinecliff Bridge up to the 199 intersection, probably back in the 80s, the state went and sprayed Roundup on either side of Route 9G, and there's all wetlands through there. Defoliated the plants, great, but it would have been better to cut.
Roundup is not persistent in the soil.
No.
It's not-
No, it's just for one season, one application. So it's right now,
I found, Epsom salts and a gallon of vinegar and just a drop of Dawn will kill a lot.
right. Cary Institute, when Brad Roller was there, he had a formula similar to that.
I used it on a slate patio
Yeah,
in between and it did the job.
I think he just used regular table salt with white vinegar and some dish detergent.
Yeah,
Mixed it up in the spray bottle
Yeah.
and sprayed it, which is better, but with a multiflora rosebush, it's so.
I have
tenacious.
one of those pump things and then you
Yeah.
mix a big batch of it up and then you just spray it between and
Yeah,
it
but-
really worked.
For smaller weeds,
Well, no, some of them were pretty big in my,
but not as big as a multiflora rosebush.
no.
That's like more cutting, digging, Roundup application. Any other questions?
I have one. I read something a while back about an invasive worm.
Oh,
the
the
jumping
jumping worms.
I don't know what they're called, but it was scary.
It is scary. They're around and another reason why I would hesitate to buy plants from a garden club plant sale. I did belong to the garden club in Red Hook and that was a concern of mine, so we had to look on the internet. There's a formula that you can mix. Say someone digs up a plant in their garden and they're gonna sell it in the plant.
Actually,
I forgot what it was. It was a spice, and I'm not sure if it was oregano or what spice it was, but you mix up a solution of this, pour it on the soil, and it leaches down, worms come up, and you can kill them. But they are pretty damaging to plants and lawns.
And soil, according to what I read. yeah.
Yeah, because they spread very easily. They're big, they're huge.
I haven't seen any in my yard here in town.
Yeah, they're in Red Hook. The highway superintendent in Red Hook was in the garden club. She said they're in Red Hook, which concerned me even more about, local members digging up their plants to sell in the plant sale, but we doused them with this formula to bring the worms up to the soil.
The thing that I read said, there are actually a lot of them are coming from professional nurseries where you would buy plants, and that was really scary too.
Sometimes, I don't know if this happened to someone else, but I bought a particular plant. And there must have been seeds for Sedum Autumn Joy in the soil. Because the next year I got a volunteer plant, Sedum Autumn Joy, which I'm not complaining, but I think too, and I also know, because I worked in the nursery one summer, we're potting, and then we divide seedlings up. And sometimes the seeds get mixed and you don't really know what's in there. But, if you're in a large agricultural area, it's very easy for invasives to spread because no one's really going to keep track of that on a daily basis as a homeowner would.
But of course, some of these plants were just determined to be, or just named, designated invasive. I think on the property that we owned, a lot of them were used for ornamentals at first, and then yeah. And then within the 80s or 90s or something, they suddenly became, bad. So
Yeah, like this one.
yeah.
Yeah, we planted them here in Pine Place.
I'm sure.
I remember when they were planted,
I know everybody planted them.
And
They were the go. They
they
go.
smell like awful in the spring.
But they're hard to kill. They
Yeah.
kill everything around it, but they're hard to kill themselves.
Yeah,
But
and I mean, when I look at this field on 308 in Rhinebeck, in the spring, they're everywhere. Now in Hudson, this is pretty, but when you drive in Hudson in the end of April, there's redbud trees growing in the woods right when you come in on Route 23 into Hudson, which looks pretty. I don't think redbuds are as damaging as
No, they weren't at all.
the Bradford pear trees. But the other thing about redbuds are, my friend who landscaped said they're a 20-year tree. They get a lot of diseases and a lot of problems. So a redbud, if you buy it in the last 20 years, consider yourself lucky. So I figure if these trees look pretty for a while in Hudson in the woods, they're not going to last forever.
But like on my property, a lot of our efforts is just trying to get rid of the stuff that was planted in the 80s or 70s as ornamentals, where everyone said, hey, do this, and now it's bad. Now they're.
Yeah, it is hard. Yep. So any other questions?
Would you do a talk on like invasive insects or something? We've got oak wilt that we just discovered on our property, and it might be nice to do a talk on that.
Yeah, I could do that. I have to take time to create it. But maybe in the spring, do something like that, and give time over the winter to create that. Yeah, I'm not a vegetable gardener. So in Columbia County, so many farm stands, people give away plants or the honor box at the end of their driveway with excess tomatoes. But when I worked for the Cooperative Extension, and I learned a lot about tomatoes, I was there when the tomato, I can't think of what the name of was, the blight that tomatoes had in 208 or 209. Tomatoes have a lot of insect damage and a lot of disease. And same thing with apples. It's kind of amazing to me that apples look as good as they do because they get a lot of diseases and they get a lot of insects. And I had Chuck Mead of Mead Orchards do a talk one time. And he said, he's a Cornell graduate. His family had these big orchards and they had pumpkins, raspberries, blueberries, very big commercial farm. And he said, I always poo-pooed the organic people. But he said, one winter I went to a seminar and I figured, well, I'll use one section of my apple orchard and I will spray with a fish fertilizer. And I worked for a client, it smells, it's really strong smelling. And I was concerned that it would attract raccoons because it smells like fish. So he said this one area where he used the fish fertilizer, the trees were healthier. So that meant less spraying on the trees and was better for the trees and the consumer, you eating the apple because there's less, spraying done on that. So, a healthy plant, and the problem we have in this area, we had a lot of rain in the beginning of the season and the plants all grew proliferate. Then we had the extreme heat and that stresses plants out.
Yeah, it was a weird year.
Yeah, my former boss said to me about maple trees, one year we have a wet summer, trees grow, the roots grow, the next summer it's a drought. And those roots are looking for the same amount of water and they can't find it. And maples require a lot of water. They'll steal water from other plants around them. And the tree starts to get stressed. Once it's like us, if we're tired and we don't get enough sleep and we're overdoing things, we're more likely to get a cold. The plant gets stressed, it's more likely to have insects and disease come to it as if it was a healthy plant. So our erratic weather is really playing a big influence on plants here.
Yeah.
Now this year, happy. We didn't have the gypsy moth this year.
Yay.
Yay.
They have lantern flies down.
Yeah, that's really bad too.
In South New York?
Yeah. Yeah, I saw a picture this morning. I forgot where it was in New York State. The whole base of a tree, like a foot and a half wild, was filled with these insects. And the person who took the photo, the homeowner, didn't know what they were. And everybody's saying, those are lantern flies, kill them, kill them, kill them, because they're so damaging.
They have any natural predators?
Probably not here.
When I was in Elizabeth, I was growing a few things in pots and I had some tomatoes. And one day I found a tomato hornworm on my tomatoes, but it already had bracketed wasp eggs on it.
Yeah, that's good. That's a natural predator. Yeah, that's a good thing. Yeah, there was a garden center called Gardens Alive. And that's where you could buy insects that were natural predators for your gardens. I don't know if they're still in business or not. That's a positive.
Yeah.
Scary. Scary, scary, scary.
Blind ladybug, Adam's rear guard.
Yeah.
Not that they can do too much, but
Well, ladybugs usually go after aphids. A lot of times you'll see them in the house, going after your house plants, but I would never get upset until I saw a ladybug. Because I figured they're doing their job.
Thank you so much for this talk.
You're welcome.
So basically cut them down and kill them.
Yeah, and these things, the biggest thing is these were all mistakes, like your property, they were like landscape plants.
Nancy, do you have them in?
I did this thing here.
You
Okay.
can go over to
Two.
this with me and see what the school has cut back. If they have.